On today's episode, we're going to interview writer Gailie Ruth Caress and talk about her debut novel and her process for writing in a niche historical romance genre. Hello, Hirn Lieblings. I'm Mari, science fiction and fantasy author who's been living in southern Germany since 2014. Today we're going to interview Gailie Ruth Caress, an author whose debut novel, Fearful Symmetry, is out today under an independent historical romance publisher. Among their many projects, they cater to a boutique genre in Jane Austen variation works. Gailie's novel is a Pride and Prejudice variation. Also, Gailie and I grew up together. We've been friends since we were 12, and I have always found her to be a supremely better writer than me, and I am so happy for her to join the club of published writers like myself. But before we get started, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell if you haven't already. Here on Adventures of Lamari, we talk about writing, living abroad, and everything in between. So let's get to this interview. Well, Gailie, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Mari.
Of course, of course. Well, why don't we get this interview started by having you tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am currently talking to you from rural Illinois, where we've been snowed in. I am a mom of two. I'm a pastor's wife, not by choice, but by happenstance. Kind of funny. He went into ministry after we got married. But it's been an adventure and it's been fun. I used to work nonprofit and I was an English major, and I'm a big nerd in many things that cross over the ways Lamari is a big nerd. But also bridging even farther into Victorian and Regency literature. So not always so much the sci-fi, but more fantasy and historical. So
yeah,
fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, why don't you tell us also how you fell into this genre of writing?
So initially, I fell into it shortly after college. And, I had studied up so much on Gothic fiction in writing my, we call it an IS, but it's sort of like your senior thesis. And Gothic fiction kind of overlays that era towards the end of the Regency into Victorian literature, what we would consider kind of moving through the Romantic movement, as it were. So I had read a lot of that. So I had that voice in the back of my head. And I decided to explore essentially a story within the landscape of Pride and Prejudice, seeing how characters would deal with essentially a disaster. And I wanted to create kind of a journey tale for Elizabeth that's quite a bit different than the Comedy of Manners story that she's in, where we only see a crisis towards the very end of the novel, and then all of a sudden this sudden epiphany and growth, where she's like, wow, this terrible thing that happened in the novel, it's Lydia, her little sister, proves how great a man Darcy is, and she realizes that she really could have loved him all along, and that kind of sets them up for their happy ending. But it only happens in the very, very last quarter of the book. I decided to move a crisis, not with Lydia, but with something completely different. And most people who have seen the cover of what's now the completed work know there's a fire at Longbourn, their home, that really abruptly brings an end to Elizabeth's childhood. She has to mature very, very quickly, take on more adult roles, and at the same time see and appreciate people around her in new ways, and that includes Darcy. And it was kind of a way of me exploring what had happened in my own life. You know very well that my dad died when I was 21, of an age with Elizabeth Bennet, in dealing with a sudden kind of childhood end event. And I had to figure out how to navigate that, what that looked like. So for me, it was kind of a cathartic thing. I was writing it in the very safe and familiar world of Pride and Prejudice, dealing with characters that I believe were very capable people. One of the reasons why I love them so much is Elizabeth Bennet is very intelligent. So is Darcy. There's a lot of lovable characters surrounding them, but at the same time, some similar difficulties. So I fell into it really as an exercise in exploring the unfamiliar through the familiar, as kind of a form of almost narrative therapy. That's what I'll call it.
Wow, that's awesome. That is so awesome. That's really cool. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you, because there's these things that I mean, we've known each other for so long, yet, I didn't think about, how you were able to channel, what your own emotions and what you've been going through to really bring this like new life into a very well-loved story.
And it was pretty fun too. I mean,
yes, of course. It was fun. Yes, absolutely.
It because I was still processing those feelings, and my husband had just recently entered seminary, so we just got married. I was working full-time, sometimes full-time plus doing a lot of fundraising and kind of event planning at that time for a nonprofit school. And frankly, he'd come home, he'd have to study, and I was bored, and I missed being an English major, and I missed writing. So there we go. I started writing it, and it was helpful to me. I, at that time, shared it on a board that was really well trafficked in the aughts of the 2000s. Into, at this time, it was 2011, 2012-ish, called the Derbyshire Writers Guild. And a lot of people are familiar with that forum. It's where a lot of people who really know the world of Jane Austen tend to post their work, and other people then kind of critique it. So that was kind of fun.
That is really cool. Yeah, I find the genre is so specific. And what is it I have here? What actually makes a book a Pride and Prejudice variation or an Austen variation?
Sure. So this is kind of one of the specialties of my publisher in particular, but it is essentially a professional form of fan fiction. It has to take place in that Regency setting, and more specifically playing with recognizable characters, but yet still allowing you to move new characters into the narrative, so long as you don't disrupt it. So as a sci-fi writer, you're probably familiar with writing the own rules of your universe that you know you will not break. This is how this specific magic works. This is how this specific technology works. This is the culture of this planet. You don't want to move outside of that, especially in Jane Austen's realm, because not only are some of those rules written within her characters, and you don't want to go beyond what those characters would do, you're also in a historic setting. So as going through taking this from essentially what was fan fiction just for me and having it move through professional content editing and line editing, they were doing things like taking out words that were used in the 1890s rather than the 18 teens. Things where you don't want to use the wrong word or turn of phrase because it didn't exist in history at that time, and would accidentally pull some of your readers out of the story in that way because you were breaking essentially a rule by putting it in an act. So that's what makes it so specific. You have to fit very specifically into the history, the genre, and a lot of the rules that Austen plays by without breaking them too much.
That's so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah. Challenging, but I kind of liked the challenge.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think because I do a lot of plotting, so in a way, when you have that kind of structure, in some ways it makes writing so much easier because these are the confines in which you have to work. But then sometimes it could be a little tricky because you may accidentally stray from it, and then you have to realize, oh no, gotta rein it back in.
And you can get in a lot of trouble. At the time when my publisher and I were talking back and forth about making some changes to the plot, she kind of told me this story about how in one of the books they got just a tiny little detail wrong. But it wound up someone on Amazon caught it and then downgraded their review just because they had caught a historic detail or reference as being incorrect. So it's kind of I was not prepared. That being one of the things that people would really, really mow my story over for. So, as I was doing a lot of rewriting and also just finishing the manuscript, because I had only gotten around to about a halfway point before life took over. It was just sitting on that forum board where eventually it was discovered by Amy and Jan, who are the leadership team behind my publisher. The publishing house at that time was really just looking for some writers that they thought could specifically fit and fill that void. And I was really surprised when they reached out to me through the boards saying, hey, I think this is interesting. We think it's well crafted. Can you complete it and can you get it done?
That's so cool. That is so cool.
You gotta know.
You have touched a little bit on like the origin story, the inspiration, but I think, is there anything else you want to add about like what inspired you? Or maybe we don't need to necessarily answer that question.
One thing that I guess inspired me was the challenge of writing Austen with more difficulties than maybe sometimes Austen was herself comfortable with. You know, I hesitate to say that, but you know, when you're reading an Austen novel, you feel very safe because there's this specific tone that Austen has that is almost reassuring. You're in these bounds of decorum. You know, if you've read one novel of hers, you essentially understand how the arc of many of her other novels will therefore go. So as you're reading along and say, you know, Sense and Sensibility or Emma after you've read Pride and Prejudice, you know eventually you're going to get a happy ending. So the idea of maybe playing with how many things can I throw their way before this happily ever after happens, kind of appealing to me. So I guess that was just the other thing I wanted to try, was to see if I could take a safe place like Austen, add something unsafe, and watch what happens.
That's cool. That's really, it's a really good way of looking at it.
So a little bit different than a lot of the world building that you had to do. It's just a completely different process because I'm working from a landscape that already exists, but it's putting a lot of new things into it without hopefully breaking so many rules that I get run over for.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine. Well, I mean, I would say in a way, I mean, it's almost a weird disconnect, but like even with being on YouTube, especially as an expat YouTuber where I talk about different cultures, you still also have to walk a fine line because, you know, if you're talking stereotypes or you're talking, you know, like your own observations, obviously you can't encompass everything of that culture, and somebody could easily still get offended if you're not careful, or if you get your facts wrong. Definitely will get called out if I get something about Germany wrong. Yeah, there are definitely comments in this section, and you lose credibility, you know, if you're not careful. And I feel like it's the same in your, you know, genre writing, where, you know, you do need to follow these rules so that you can gain the trust of your audience.
Oh yeah, and there's kind of a sacred trust there too, because these people have been reading Austen for years, and they have an emotional relationship with the characters. So you know, if they do something in your book that a reader feels goes absolutely against, say, their concept of Mr. Darcy, they're going to get really upset. There's an emotional investment there. So yeah, it's kind of a tightrope at certain times. And in fact, I completely changed the ending of my novel after it went through some peer review, and then even with my content editor, just because she felt it was a little bit controversial.
Oh wow! So yeah, very excited to read it. I want to know.
Yes, for sure. Oh, look at you and your fabulous ceramic.
Thank you. This is a gift from one of our other fellowship members. Have to give a quick shout out, Kirsty. I saw you're also drinking tea. What tea are you drinking?
I'm just drinking a very plain green tea today, and you'll have to pardon my lipstick marks, but I've got my happy squirrel on the mug, red-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Awesome.
Yeah, just a very plain green tea. I'm in the middle of a cleanse, which I don't typically do, but I don't know. I just felt like doing it. I think part of it was I was trying to shift my wardrobe to spring, and I had an unwelcome realization that I've got to shift a few things.
Yeah, so, I know that feeling. Yes, I know that feeling. I'm actually drinking a salted caramel oolong.
Ooh, fancy and delicious.
Yes. It's really good. It shouldn't be this good, but it's good. There's a young woman. I'm actually related to her by marriage. She's the local florist, and she was the florist for our wedding. She started selling tea in her shop, and so in order to support her, I went to her shop the other day, and I spent a ton of money on teas. And this was one of them. So I was like, oh yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, so watchers of the show, Mari and I go back about 20-ish years, and one of the things we do share in common is we do like a good cup of tea. For real.
Yes.
Yes.
Tea is
Yes.
very important. Yes.
For sure.
All right. Well, anyway, so back to the interview. So, my next question actually is about your publisher. I want to know what are the requirements or rules in case any of our watchers or viewers are interested in publishing something in the same genre as yourself.
Yes. So Quills and Quartos, I mean, they do more than just Austen, although they really do have quite a crew that specializes in Austen as part of a branch of what they do. It is historical romance fiction, more specifically and more broadly. And they are a small independent publishing house that kind of started when the founders went rogue from a different publishing house. They are they kind of incorporate kind of a crash team between obviously some really great editors, really great cover artists, and also some really good marketers as well. And more specifically, and that's like really just 2 people. It's relatively small. And the name of them is Quills and Quartos Publishing, and Quartos is kind of spelled like the start of quarters. And it comes from, of course, that old printing technique when they first started making booklets, where they would essentially take large sheets of parchment and fold them into quartos to make the book. This was kind of around the era of Shakespeare that was happening. So Quills and Quartos Publishing, and they do have their own submission rules. I believe you can go on there, message them with a query, and send a sample. And I know Jan and Amy look over those pretty closely. But yeah, I didn't go through the normal submission process, so it might be hard for me to speak to that because they just kind of came out and, for lack of a better, headhunted me by through some of the forums where they found generally pretty respectable quality of writing among the fan fiction circle, just to see if there were any new voices out there. So that's how they found me. But that's not to say they can't find somebody else through the submission process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So they're open to it, for sure.
All right. I will see about actually providing a link to the Quills and Quartos website down in the video, like in the comment section, the description section, in case anybody else is interested. They can go and look at the Quills and Quartos website and see if they could be a good fit.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of really, really pretty cover art on that website too. I just like to scroll through and see all the things they published before.
That's awesome. That's
feels
really cool.
Romantic as you're just kind of going through. You're like, oh, this looks like a Pinterest page.
All right. So why don't you tell us, when did you first start writing, and when did you finish your first full work?
Oh goodness, I first started writing serious for me stuff, projects that I actually finished or worked towards finishing when I was about 12. And honestly, some of the first things that I wrote were in the fan fiction realm. One that I finished was a Lord of the Rings fanfic. It was a long time ago. And another one that I think I finished or was close to it was actually based, and you're going to laugh at this, but it was actually a really wonderful show in the 90s when we were kids called Gargoyles. I don't know it's a show that they pull in so much history from the medieval era. They pull in great works of literature, and they kind of have these difficult discussions that you encounter almost in the X-Men universe about things like racism, about things like genocide. They even deal with misogyny. I mean, it's really a challenging show, considering that it was originally marketed as a Y7 kind of older kids show. But anyway, so those were some of the first things that I wrote, and then I don't think I actually had anything published until my late teens, and that was usually like guest blogs. I think I had something on one of the InterVarsity blogs that was posted sometime when I was about 19. And I submitted something else to, I think, Guidepost magazine. So I didn't really do a lot of professional long works like novels, until honestly, I mean, this is my first actual novel, something that was structured to be novel length, to follow the traditional kind of novel plotline, all that kind of stuff. So, and of course, to make it extra challenging, I signed my contract in March of 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And yes. So here I was, I had a half-finished manuscript. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I can get it done by October. No difficulty at all, another 75,000 words or so. With my kids all home, I had a kid at that time that was at least going to preschool during the week, that came home. And at that time, I also had a very small toddler that was a year old that needed lots of mommy attention. So, and we're also 3 hours away from family. So that added an extra difficulty.
Oh, man.
But my husband is lovely. He's wonderful. We have a mutualist marriage where he serves me, I serve him. So if I had a time where I was like, I really feel like I have something to write about today, you know, can you carve out time so that you're the one doing baths and getting the kids in bed this evening so I can get started at 7 instead of having to wait until 8:30 when they're actually asleep. Those kinds of things, to just carve out little pieces of time.
Yeah. I'm so glad that it was able to, that, you know, you have such a great partner that made this work and, you know, so that you could do this.
Oh yeah, he's my Mr. Darcy, for sure. Even personality-wise, you know, he's one of those man of few words, but when he does say something, it's usually something that will amaze the whole room. He's a deep thinker and an old soul, so lucky.
Very lucky, yes, it's awesome. That's great. He's an awesome guy, guys. I was at the wedding, FYI. Is there any particular author that influenced you, either while you were growing up or even now as an adult?
Oh gosh, well, obviously the biggest influence was Austen, but kind of layered over that, Elizabeth Gaskell, who wrote North and South, Charlotte Bronte, and Anne Rice were kind of my trifecta in terms of crafting kind of an authentic interior voice for emotion in characters as they process and deal with very dangerous and difficult things. They kind of served as a really good model for me to try to find my own voice and how that works. And then someone who I look up to in terms of really, really creating a good plot, one that, you know, dives right in, takes off, and has almost a roller coaster ending, is Thomas Harris. And most people know him from Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal fame. And that's kind of an odd thing to draw into something as what we think of as fluffy as an Austen work. But he has such a succinctness to his writing where he wastes not a word ever. And he has an excellent sense of pacing, you know, a sense of, okay, I've spent long enough here, we're moving on. We're going to develop this just enough to get you interested in understanding what's going on, and we're going right into the action flow. So he's someone whose voice as a narrator I really admire, just in terms of how he gets stories moving. So there's I guess that's a small group of writers.
Yeah. That's great. I love your mix where, you know, you have Austen and Thomas Harris and Anne Rice. Who's the other one? Who was Elizabeth
Gaskell? She's more famous North and South, which is kind
the
of
one they made the TV series, right? With Richard Armitage. Yeah,
yes.
That's right. I remember you talking about that.
Yes. It's wonderful as an adaptation, but it does wander from the book. Okay. But the book also just has a wonderful interior voice for its characters that I loved. I really loved it.
Yeah.
So, but that's set in kind of early industrial England. It's definitely a more of an almost Victorian setting. We're moving away from Austen. This would have been like her grandkids writing, essentially.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, but I just love the mix because it having that variety, I think, helps develop your very distinct voice, because you're not trying to emulate one specific author or one specific genre. You are taking from, little bits of everything that you like, and with that, you create your own voice.
Right, for sure. And even going back to my script later, because as I mentioned, I started it when I was still in my early 20s. I was like 24, 25. And then coming back to it to finish it after 30. It was interesting to me as I kind of went back and restructured how I can tell where I'm trying to create a pastiche of Jane Austen. The Austen voice was very strong. So as I'm going back to rewrite, re-edit, I was more consciously trying to go, that's not really my voice as much anymore. I really want to incorporate more of this or that. And it kind of took on its own life from there, which was kind of fun to see, but also really challenging, because I'm probably like you and a lot of writers. I don't like to have to go back and sword play, cut through a lot of my old work. It feels emotionally difficult at times, but at the same time, it's healthy work. So
yeah. Oh yeah. It's trying to find that balance, because I know a lot of authors worry, especially first time writers, they worry, like, when is their story going to be enough? So then they keep going, revisiting. And so on one hand, yes, you do need to, work on a story and always improve it. But then at some point you do need to put it aside and, take what you've learned and apply it to another project.
Yep. Oh, for sure. And there's whole sections of this story, like I said, that got cut, that may honestly show up somewhere else in some other writing.
Oh, absolutely.
I think I had a prof that called those the golden nuggets. They're moments that speak to you, but they can almost feel like rabbit holes, because while they may be wonderful, they disrupt a plot line, or they introduce a side theme that, while it's interesting, it doesn't go with the main flow. So I was having to, as a first-time novelist, encounter what it's like to have to do a lot of that excavation type of work, where you're digging out these things and trying to make things look more smooth, and all of that. Renovation.
So for my next question, you have already kind of touched base on this, but I thought he deserves a few more minutes. Who is the most supportive person when it comes to your writing?
Well, aside from my wonderful husband, who understands my passions, and keeps asking me what I want to be when I grow up almost every year. And he's always confounded by my answer, because I'm one of those people where the idea of being and doing one thing forever honestly scares me. I really prefer the idea of trying and doing a lot of different things.
Right.
So when I essentially told him, hey, for this season of my life, I really want to publish this novel. I'm going to go ahead and take this contract. He jumped on board. Like, awesome. Let's see where this takes you. Let's do
Absolutely.
it. But another one, of course, growing up, was my dad, who kept a lot of my writing work from my early years, came across them in folders as I was cleaning out some of his belongings. It was really sweet to see all the things that he had saved, and you could tell he was proud of that he'd passed around to people. So yeah, there's a lot of him behind this as well, just as an early encourager. And then I really have to shout out to my team of peer readers that also kept me going through the process. And I know you find these to be really important people as well. My friend Stephanie, my former English prof, Dr. Martha Thompson, was fabulous and amazing, especially because she kind of specializes in this era of literature. So she was exceptionally helpful. And she kept drawing out things and adding side commentary as she was reading that was so fascinating. She's like, and you should read Mary Wollstonecraft on this topic, because this is really fast. I was getting an education even as I was rewriting. And just also emotionally, my good friend Hannah, who is an excellent encourager too. So, and herself quite a romance reader. So she has a good historical romance that is actually set accurately in a setting. So all good.
Yeah, having a tribe is so important. I mean, like, so much of writing is it's solitary. You are pretty much by yourself, and it means so much when you find your tribe, or like, those people that are there for you. It means the world.
Yes, and during a pandemic, absolutely. These people were
Absolutely.
willing to let mail them big fat manuscripts, or were willing to sit scroll through, a 113,000 word document in their spare time, which is some of them not much, especially my friend Stephanie, who has quite a past with kids too.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate them. That's time and love and creative energy.
Absolutely. Oh, great. All right, so I have a few other questions before we get to some of the funnier stuff. One of my subscribers wanted to, this is more of just like, I guess, get down in the technical nitty gritty, but she was asking for specific details. For example, like what tools do you use? Do you use like a writing program? Do you use Word? Like when you're writing, what do you use?
Oh my gosh, I'm so old school. I definitely use Word a lot. But then one thing I'll sit back and do, just using an accessibility function on my iPhone, is then, send it to myself in a PDF, and I'll have my phone read it to me, so that I feel sounds like through an almost unemotive voice that is not mine. It helps remove me from the text, so that I can go, oh, that doesn't sound quite as clear as I thought it did. It's the kind of that experience of someone else reading your own work to you, gives it a different voice. So that helped me a lot. That's kind of quirky. Maybe it goes back to maybe our shared theater training, but the idea of someone doing a reading on a text, just to feel as I was kind of working through. So yeah, I'm not especially high tech for sure. And then I also relied on a paper manuscript. Once I got through that first really, what I felt was a pretty solid draft, I went to a shop and I had it printed and bound with one of those little rolly binder type bindies. And that's what my husband read through, actually, as a peer reader, because he prefers an actual book. He's old fashioned. And it really helped to actually, go through, make notes, see someone else's notes, and even do things like mark where a chapter begins and ends, so that I could actually keep track of my own pacing and whether or not I'm consistent, or if I've made certain choices that work well. If say we've got a chapter that really is sort of a bridge and it's slightly shorter, does it feel strange? Does it feel abrupt? So I kind of like to play with it in my hands and in my ears as well.
That's so cool. Yeah, the audio thing, I know quite a few authors do that. I think we'll actually probably then link a video. I think it's Brittany Wang, who's another author tuber. She did a video where she would send her manuscript to her Kindle through WhisperSync and have the Kindle then read it out loud for her.
That's clever.
So yeah, but it's the same thing. Like, I mean, obviously it doesn't have to be Kindle. Not everybody has a Kindle, but you figured out a way to use the same process in a way that works for you. So I know in case some people are interested, I will link that video above, because have I tried that? I have not. No, I have not really tried it. I mean, I tried it for something else, like learning how to get my iPad to read things out loud for me. But I haven't tried it with my manuscript, so I'll have to try that for another project. So another question is, I mean, granted, with Fearful Symmetry, this is your first book, but how do you plot? Do you pants? Like, how did you, when you did this book, how did you go about with Fearful Symmetry? Did you plot it, or did you just have some vague idea?
So I am one of those people that sometimes will flip to the end of a book to see if I even want to read it, which is terrible. I know other authors hate that when they hear that from a reader, but that's just me. I think it's because I have enough ADHD in my personality that I'm aware of my own attention deficits that might get in the way. And with that being said, I was writing Fearful Symmetry. There were certain things that I knew I wanted to happen. But as I was writing it, I think as you develop the characters and their own expressions, thoughts, and reactions, sometimes they even surprise you. You get to the point like, no, in this scene, actually, this may go a little bit more this way. This may go a little bit more that But I did have, like I said, some major plot points that I definitely wanted to happen, to the point that when I originally drafted it way back in 2012-ish, 13-ish, I had written all the way up to about the halfway mark, and then I wrote the ending. I skipped way ahead over a middle section just to see if I could get there. And it's kind of challenging to connect that bridge. And then I think ultimately, as part of the decision making that we made through peer reading and content editing, there was a lot of that ending that I chopped, especially the circumstances surrounding it. I kept a lot of the dialogue because the dialogue really was speaking and important, but the circumstances radically changed. So it's just interesting how that kind of remodeling happened. I kind of scaffolded my house, you know. I had even picked what color I thought I was going to paint it at the end, and then realized at the very end that I had to really change the tint on the paint before it actually, you know what I mean? It's kind of my last step. So there's my kind of muddy metaphor for you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of where I am. It is kind of a mix between plotting and pantsing, where I have an idea where things need to go, but it is really fun to see how your characters get from point A to point B, like, because sometimes you'll still get there, but it's not in a way that you anticipated.
Right. For sure.
Yeah. Fun.
Definitely had moments where I was kind of surprised, where I'm like, okay, this is not exactly where I thought it was going to go, but it feels more natural now to the character. You just have to kind of let that plan go. And sometimes it turns into a wonderful surprise. So.
Yeah, definitely. Worth it. So so with your first book, by the time this video airs, it will be release day, FYI, guys. Treating writing as a career. This is. Do you have more books in the pipeline? Is there?
I would definitely like to write for them again, and I have some ideas stewing. And in fact, I even just kind of had an email back and forth with one of my editors that was kind of gently prodding, going, start writing again. And I'm like, oh, I almost feel like I'm in that postpartum stage after having a baby, and then people are like, so when are you having your next baby? And you're like, I'm not sleeping through the night, because there. While I enjoyed the process and kind of the race to the finish to get, the manuscript completed, I think I'm doing a bit of a creative reset over the next couple months, at least, just to kind of get my feet back under me, because even up through December, I was still doing some edits. And oftentimes my time to write is at night. So, I'll be up till midnight or 1, but then I'm up with a toddler again at 6.
Absolutely.
And it still is. I mean, they've done so much of the homework for me. And they're also so enmeshed in the Austen community, and it's kind of a name. So whenever they put out something, there's automatically an audience for it. You don't have to go hunting for your audience.
That is literally like half the battle.
Yes, it really is. Because otherwise it's like shouting into a void. And especially right now, the self-publishing world for Regency romance has exploded after Bridgerton. Really exploded, because everybody's like, well, I could write a story like that. And they put it out there. But now there's thousands to weed through. Thousands and more getting uploaded every day. So it's a cutthroat market. So for me to enter that, kind of as an anonymous person rather than having the backing of a publishing house, would have been really hard.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, that's definitely my plan down the line. I have a couple ideas for stories that I would like to get traditionally published, because one of the big things that they tell you in some of the other author Facebook groups that I'm in, especially 20 books to 50K, essentially that's that, you can start making about $50,000 a year if you have at least 20 books out. And it's essentially like the idea that, to create a back catalog, because just having one book is really not enough down the line, because you'll find people that love your work. I do have my fans, which are awesome, but there's only just the one book. I mean, soon there'll be two, and then I have the short story, but the idea is to give them something, like in the meantime.
Right. And I know one of their goals is try to publish something every year, is essentially what I've been told.
Yep.
Just in this stage of life, I'm like, it might be more like once every 2 years for me.
And that's okay. That is honestly, that's okay. I mean, like it's okay. Yeah. I mean, honestly, better to take a little bit more time and produce quality work than rush it. And
that's the other thing. Out. I would hate to compromise, especially, if readers fall in love with your quality and then in the second book they don't get it. It's like, why even do it?
Exactly.
We've all had that experience, that second movie or that second book experience where the second one's just nowhere near as good as the first. So
yep. Something about it is just off.
Sequel syndrome is just Sequel syndrome. I want to avoid that, and I know you did a number of really, really clever things. Just to kind of up your ante with book 2, I know you talked about that are going to ensure that it's quality, that, the Last Imperator is going to be just as great, if not better, than the God Queen, which is really, I think, what every artist and every novelist should aim for, is just keep going higher.
Exactly. I learned so much from my editor with the God Queen, and I made sure to take everything that I learned and used it in the Last Imperator. And my editor noticed, and that was like the best feeling in the world.
Yes.
So she was like, "You took everything I taught." I'm like, "Yay!" It was great. And so now I have like a list of what I'm learning from this one, and I'm like, "Oh, I cannot wait to use what I've learned here, even for the next one, so it can be even better."
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yes, and to find someone who points out weaknesses in your own writing and try to those nasty habits in time for book 2.
Exactly.
Valuable. It's great.
And I think, I feel like I've been very, very lucky. I don't know many authors who complain about their editors, of course, but like when you find an editor, well, I guess because it's self-publishing, since we have to go and find ours ourselves, and we don't have the publishing house to find the editor for us, so to speak. To have that editor that, like, after working with them or getting their feedback, you end up being more excited to work on the project, and you don't feel dread. You're like, oh, I can't wait, like, because that working with them, your book is going to be just that much better. You just feel that much more confident about your story.
Oh, for sure. And even, I'm really grateful in the content editing stage when I literally jumped in on a call with my content editor, because, that was at the time when we were in the crisis of how do we fix the ending if it's this controversial, that she was willing to just jump in and throw ideas around with me. Just let's, talk turkey. Let's talk moving pieces. What could we move? What should be kept? What shouldn't be kept? What makes sense? What could we try? And I sent her like a couple versions, just to kind of what the reaction was, and just being willing to have someone undertake that creative play with you it's an amazing gift. It's great.
Yes. Oh yeah. I had with my editor, and also I had my critique partner help me feel it. Like I sat with my editor also on a call, and we went through, like, I had not every plot point, obviously, but like some of the, like some of the other ones where she wasn't entirely sure, and I was like, let's talk about it in case, so then I can see where the disconnect is, like it makes sense to me, but her being the outside person, she can help me see it in a way that I didn't see it before. And she had the patience to sit with me as I went through like every like note that I had. I can't remember how long that call was, but I was so grateful for her for doing that, because I felt so much better afterwards, like that I knew what needed to be done. And then whatever other things that I needed to figure out a way, then I talked to my CP about it, who's a lovely young lady who lives out in Tasmania, who's so awesome. And she helped me figure out some other like fun plot points that I was missing, and it even helped me come up with an idea for like a short story that I need to work on as well. So yeah, like it's awesome when you have those people that you need it sometimes, because sometimes you just need to get out of your own head.
Yeah, you really do. And just have someone who's willing to do that hard work with you.
Exactly.
to drill your head open if they have to.
So,
but that's awesome. I'm glad that you had that same experience with your editor. So it definitely builds you up.
It does. It makes you feel more confident, and it's definitely one of those things, especially with self-publishing, when they tell you you need to get an editor, and you will feel so like, especially when you get a good editor, you feel so much better about it. It's just, I don't know, it's better all around. What you're producing is the best it can be, because obviously, like, the God Queen was the best it could be at that time. The Imperator is better, but it's the best it can be at this time. So, as you're utilizing what you learn and keep improving your craft, you're not going to get it perfect the first time, but you then have that confidence to continue.
Yeah, just having that hand hold in the process.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, so we're going to go to the last few questions. I figure we've spent like a good portion here on writing, but let's get some fun stuff so we can show your sparkling and adorbs personality.
Oh boy.
All right, so we're gonna get to some non-writing related questions.
Okay.
That's this last bit. I think I only have I have 5 questions.
Okay.
Number 1, you're a new addition to the crayon box. What color would you be and why?
I want to say turquoise just because I like it, but I'd like try to call myself something really strange. I always love it when they come up with weird names. So I'd be like Robin Williams egg blue or something like that, rather than, I need something off the wall. It'd be great.
Off the wall. Yes, that'd be very fitting. All right, number 2, what is your favorite 90s jam?
Oh gosh. Well, if you remember me in middle school at the turn of the century, from the 90s to the 2000s, I was not necessarily the hippest person. I listened to a lot of classical stuff, but I will admit to some hidden love for Shania Twain's "Feel Like a Woman." It's a good karaoke one for me, honestly. And I also love "Shoot Ba-Doo" by Salt and Pepper. Gotta say, it's a good one. Definitely get
that one. Yes. Awesome. All right, number 3. If you had to be shipwrecked on a deserted island, but all your human needs, such as food and water, were taken care of, what 2 items would you want to have with you?
Probably a hotspot and a tablet, so I could just read and engage whenever I felt like it.
Oh, that is perfect. Oh, and then no one will bother you while you read. Oh,
yeah, I know. Past that, after going through a pandemic with 2 children, 5 and under, so it was that's like almost a fantasy to at least spend like a month that way, just to recharge. Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
Put me on.
All right, number 4. If you could only choose one song to play every time you walked into a room for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh gosh, this one's challenging. I mean, it would probably set the wrong tone, but it's probably the most badass entry music ever written, and that's the Imperial March by John Williams.
That's awesome.
And honestly, my inspiration for this is my toddler. My 2-year-old son will come out of the bathtub with his towel around his naked body like a cloak, and he'll go dun 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 dun. Bathroom, and it's simultaneously adorable, as well as sufficiently intimidating to the cat. So
to the cat.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love your kids. They're so cute.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Always on my toes.
Never a dull moment. Never a dull moment.
No.
All right. For our 5th and final question.
Oh boy.
All right, ready? Would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
ducks are really mean sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking the giant duck is a bad idea. I would rather deal with the horses just because, if they're duck size, they're puntable. And, but they don't have those snapping bills. And also, I know horses well enough that if you give them food, they are cool with you. Like, totally cool. So I'll take the horses that are duck-sized.
All right, duck-sized horse. That's awesome. That's awesome. The imagery of you punting a duck-sized horse.
Yeah, they're puntable, and they're also yeetable at that size.
Yeah, yeetable. Yeet. Oh, that's awesome. Well, Abby, that's all the questions I have for you. You have been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me on. This is fun. Anytime we do this Skype, it's fun.
It's always fun. Yes, yes. I hope to have you back again. Maybe we'll come up with another fun project / topic we can gush about over tea.
We could do hot guys. That's what we used to do 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, this is very true. Very true.
It's never ending. It's what millennial men in Hollywood have aged well. How about that? The international market. Because I've realized I know like none of the young people that are up and coming in Hollywood now.
I don't know them either. Oh my gosh. Totally like.
It's bad.
It tells my age. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. I think one of my wake up calls honestly was Bridgerton, and they brought up the whole cast of like, these are all new people to me. I have almost seen none of them before.
Mm-hmm.
And I started a new series that week that was in a modern setting, and once again knew not a single actor that was under 30, and I was like, I'm getting old. Oh man.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Yes, just had another birthday, so it's hitting home.
Well, anyway, thank you so much again, and I guess we'll head back to the studio.
I'll see you later.
And that's it. What do you guys think of the interview? Isn't she such a doll? I love her to death. We've been friends since we were kids, so of course I'm going to think she's a doll. If you would like to see more of Gailie, let me know. I'd be more than happy to get her back on this channel if you guys want. So let me know in the comments below. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and give this video a thumbs up, because it lets me and YouTube know you like content like this and you want to see more. Please leave me a comment if you have any questions or if there's a certain topic you would like to see on this channel. If you have a love of romance and Jane Austen and want to learn more, check out Gailie's blog at GailieRuthWrites.com or go to her publisher at QuillsandQuartos.com. Also, don't forget to leave a review for your favorite authors. It really helps us all out and it's free to do so. And don't forget to connect with Gailie or myself on social media, whether it is through Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. And that's it. Until next time. Adi!